I was born in Saudi Arabia. My parents were Lebanese. And in 1986, in the middle of a civil war in Lebanon, we moved from Saudi Arabia to Lebanon because my dad wanted us to learn English because the educational system was much better. I grew up in a war-torn country. My school, my elementary school, was literally in the middle of the warring factions. So that when they started shooting rockets at each other, we were right in the middle. I was done. That was in 1992. That finished, and then I went to high school in Lebanon. And then the day I was graduating from high school, I got my visa to come here to the United States, which was a big thing. I've had uncles leave, but not just children. So I remember my mother just hugging me in the middle of the basketball court. It was in a basketball court, and just started crying. The problem was she was probably right, because she didn't get to see me for 17 years. Almost 17 years of that time I spent in the U.S. So I had just turned 18, packed my things. A month later, I'm in the United States on my own. I had to stay in the United States, so my mother didn't want me to go back until I get my permanent residence. And that whole story took about 17 years. I've always wanted to go to law school since I was 15. And when I was in community college, an alumna told me, "Why don't you think about going to Stetson?" I'm like, "Oh, awesome, Stetson. We're Stetson." She told me a little bit about Stetson. And I started, I sent a request to the law school, because in Lebanon, law is an undergraduate thing. You don't have to go and get an undergraduate degree before going to law school. So they said, "Oh, you need to speak to the land, because that's where our main campus is. You need to get your bachelor's." So I ended up having to pay the same amount of money if I had gone there, or UCF, where I was like, I was accepted on the spot because they had some sort of deal with the community college where I was, and I ended up at Stetson. And I thank God every day that I actually ended up there. It was amazing. I was the only international student in 2001. I was the only Arabic international student at Stetson. On an F1 who was from I think we had at the time 110. After 9/11 it just dropped. There wasn't only Arabs, but I was the only one who was Muslim on 9/11 who was a part of the special registration. The special registration was pretty much every person on a visa from any Muslim country needs to come in and register with the United States federal government. And my international student advisor at the time, Tracy Parton, took me down to Orlando where I had to get registered. It had a different feel to it. I mean, I became an orientation leader. I don't know if it's still called the same thing, shro or not. I started. They really calmed me down at Stetson. I had faced a lot of discrimination in community college, and I mean, it really opened my eyes what I had to face there. Let me tell you, in community college, I've been here in the U.S. for 2 months, and my psychology professor asked me if I had a bomb in my backpack. That did not happen at Stetson. It wasn't. I mean, if I had ever faced anything, which I didn't, it probably would not have been from faculty. It would have been from the students. But when 9/11 happened, the head of the political science department, where I was a student, and I was a student worker there, came to me and said, "If anybody opens their mouth about you," and mind you, I was the only international Muslim student, "anybody opens their mouth about you, we're gonna kick them out of school." So Stetson was family. Stetson is still family. Stetson calmed me down. Stetson made me meet a lot of lifelong friends that I can never live without. And that's how Stetson was, and Stetson still is. Dr. Bailey, Dr. T. Wayne Bailey, I know he doesn't like to admit it, but he is, and I said it at his retirement party, that my American dream would not have been possible without him. Because even when I was ready to give up, I didn't do well on the LSAT. I didn't get a job or something like that. He was always there, even though he made me hear it a couple of times. Why, you're messing up and stuff like that. But that man moved mountains for me, and I don't want to just because he's one of many. Dean Dickerson at the law school, President Lee, Margaret Lee, President Libby came afterwards, but I really don't want to forget anybody, because if I tell you how many people, Deborah Johnson, who was the head of admissions and financial aid at Stetson at the time, they really taught me the meaning of philanthropy and how you need to help people for you to succeed, and this is exactly what they did for 11 years. I was at Stetson. After undergrad, I got a job in Volusia County. Matt, I forgot his last name, one of my adjunct professors in political science was the assistant county manager in Volusia County, and Dr. Bailey spoke to him. I got an internship with them, and then I was gearing up to go to law school, and that did not come through. The funding was a little stalled, so they told me, "Why don't you come in and get an MBA in the meantime?" And Dr. Frank DeSoort, who was the head of the program, spoke to the dean and said, "We have 1 or 2 scholarships. I know one is taken. The other scholarship I wanted to go to Ahmad." And at the time, I didn't even think I'm going to go to business school. I'm terrible at numbers. And then I did my MBA for a full year, and maybe a week before having to start at the law school for orientation, the other money came in because I had a half ride for the law school at that point, and then the other half came like 3 or 4 days before the law school, and I was actually in the middle of the recession. I couldn't find a job, and so I got the money to law school, and then 2006 is when I moved to St. Pete. I remember on December 15th, 2005. That was my graduation from the MBA. And I was in the chapel. Every single dean was there, including President Lee. And we were just all in awe. Like, I was walking around not believing that I'm going to law school. It's a dream that I had for about 10 years at that point. And I moved from the Middle East to the US just for it to happen, and for it to finally actually happen. I was just in awe. I was in a trance the whole MBA graduation. I was the last one, and everybody on the stage hugged me, and they were just very excited for me. And I really don't know how to describe it. It just, I go back to thinking about that night, and Dr. Ballinger was there, and he always called me that I'm always gonna be on your team. And every time I see him, Dr. Lee was there, Dr. DeSoort was there, everybody was there, and just that everybody was crying. Like, I could not believe that it's happening. I just couldn't. I don't know how to describe it. I really don't. I was very proud to graduate, but getting there wasn't. I mean, I couldn't work the first year of law school, and I was living on $200 a month. My dorm was paid for, my phone was paid for, because we had phones in the dorm, but I was literally living on $200 a month. And I made it. I don't know how. International law. It was international law for my JD. I got a concentration, and then one day in 2008, in the middle of the recession, I had gone to DC to find a job so many times, like 6 or 7, 8 times, and I couldn't find anything. And I'm sitting there like, holy crap, Ahmad, what are you gonna do? And I swear to you, within 3 minutes the phone rings. Was Dean Dickerson saying, we have a scholarship for the LLM program for you. I didn't even think about doing that. I didn't know the LLM program. I mean, I knew what it was, but I never even thought that I could afford it. She goes, do you want it? Like, yeah. And then, I'm telling you, it happened 4 or 5 times. That wasn't the only time. I didn't even apply. And I ended up graduating with high honors. Actually, that's a diploma there. I did it because I wanted to do human rights advocacy for Muslim women. And I do a lot of that work now. But I went to DC and got a job. They were gonna pay me $38,000 in DC, which you can't even pay rent with that. And then Professor Bean sat me down and said, she was one of my human rights professors. She's like, you need to go learn how to become an attorney, and that work would come through. And Art Rios, who's one of my mentors, sits me down and says, you need to go to immigration because you make friends very quickly. And then I start working for free for someone for 6 months. 6 months. Then she applies for my H-1B, my visa. Then I passed the bar. The other law clerk she had, actually, who became an attorney, left, so I became an attorney. Then went to a different law firm, and then they petitioned for my green card, and in 2015 I got it. But the work I did at Stetson, at the law school, helps me so much right now, because I really do believe we have the best law school in the country. That's not even a question in my mind. I lucked out when I got my work visa in 2010. The numbers were not running out because we had a slushy economy. They were in, was it 2010? Yeah, it was 2010 when I got my H-1B. My employer applied for the visa. I stayed on it for 6 years, and then I moved from one law firm to another, where I transferred there. And that law firm actually applied for my green card, and it took about a year and a half to do, because they had to prove that no one in the vicinity can actually do my job. And I do a lot of that work now, but they had to prove that I'm not displacing another American worker. So they petitioned, and once I got the green card, I had a dispute with them over compensation, and I was let go the day I was going to Lebanon after 17 years. My family has grown a lot in the past 17, 18 years since I left. It was tough. It really was. I mean, I missed everything back home. From everybody getting married, to my sister growing up, graduating, to my parents getting divorced, all of these things. I was the only Ahmad in the family when I left. Now there's 6 or 7. All these cousins that I didn't even know. I literally, like, they all look alike. That's a problem. But you look at them like they have to remind me whose son that is or whose daughter that is when I'm there, because there's so many of them I can't remember. I'm terrible with names, even if they're Arab names. But it's I missed all of that. But at the bottom line is, anybody there would have traded. They would have been very happy to trade places with me. They would have taken this opportunity and came to the United States and done what I have done without even hesitation. So I'm kind of selfish when it comes to that. Yeah, it was tough, it was hard, but at the end I made it. Coming to America was a big thing. I mean, it's still the big thing. It's still the American dream. It's still it's still success. It's still, if you work hard, you're gonna make it, and that's the whole idea of the American dream. And I've met so many people from Stetson or outside of Stetson who have worked very hard to reach the American dream, and this is the land of dreams. This is, I mean, the Lady Liberty is not just in my logo. It's really a way of life for me, because when you get to meet that new person, or you see that twinkle in their eyes when they get a green card or they become citizens, it's worth all the money in the world. And I wanted that. And that was the only drive that I had.